Good afternoon, everyone. Gareth Presh, founder of the World Health Innovation Summit. Absolutely delighted to welcome you to our 16 Days of Activism event, a webinar that's been broadcast around the world, and we encourage you to take part in this discussion. If you have ideas, please put them in the comments and chat box. I'm going to hand over to our chair, Deirdre Carberry, who's been leading on our work, our expert panel on gender equality and women's empowerment, who's going to lead the session today. And over to you, Dee, and we very much look forward to this session today.
Thank you, Gareth, and delighted to welcome everyone to our panel discussion today on the 10th of December. The annual 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence. It runs from the 25th of November to the 10th of December annually, and it essentially calls for the elimination of all forms of violence against women and girls, and it invites the international community to take action against it. And that's the theme of our discussion here today. Action. Last year, our WHIS panel of experts, we held a daily webinar around the 16 days where we surfaced all the challenges that we are facing in our communities and as an international and in international society, the challenges that are hindering progress when it comes to gender equality and in turn progressing the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So we thought it very fitting after, I guess, learning about the barriers to now address those with some solutions. And I am very excited to chair this panel today, where we will be joined by a number of incredible speakers, advocates, and practitioners to discuss some actions that we can take around eliminating all forms of violence against women and girls. So on that, I would like to formally introduce Phoebe. And Phoebe, I'll let you kind of maybe give a minute or two of an introduction on your background before we really delve into what we're here today to discuss, which is the actions that you propose to prevent gender-based violence and why you are proposing these actions. So Phoebe, I will hand over to you.
Thank you so much. Let me share my screen to communicate some ideas that I try to sketch in a, I hope, very communicative way. We are at a stage in the world that we are facing multiple crises, multiple universal crises. The pandemic, obviously, the big economic recession that derives from it, climate change crisis, the increase frequency and severity of weather-related extreme events that derive from climate change, from the increased average global temperature, and of course the biodiversity collapse, the collapse of the ecosystems that our economy and society depend on. And at the same time, I would say we have another crisis, the inequality crisis, inequality between gender, inequality between the global south and the developed world, and many other forms of inequality. Today, we are focusing on gender inequality, and we want to remember all the time in whatever we do, in all sectors of the economy and in all aspects of the interaction between the economy, the society, and nature, that women and girls represent half of the world's population, and therefore they also represent half of the world's potential. Unfortunately, as I said before, gender inequality persists everywhere and stagnates social progress. I am leading an international cluster for research on sustainability transition, mainly consisting of research institutions and networks that I have a leadership position with, the research on socioeconomic and environmental sustainability laboratory at the Athens University of Economics and Business, where my economic professorship is located, the Athena Research and Innovation Center, a very big information technology innovation center that is focusing on research on the green and digital transition. EIT Climate Kick, I'm leading the Greek hub, and this is the biggest public-private partnership in Europe that accelerates finances and incubates innovations that are relevant for the climate neutral, for the transition to a climate neutral economy. And then, of course, Sustainable Development Solutions Network, this global network that Jeff Sachs at Columbia University is leading, and is trying to communicate the solutions, the sustainability solutions on all SDGs that are produced in universities and research centers across the world to the stakeholders that are there to implement the transition to sustainability, the politicians, the policymakers, the financial institutions, the businesses, the civil society, the NGO, the citizens as a whole. I lead the European Hub. I co-chair the European Hub with more than 400 institutional members and the Greek Hub. And we work on research and innovation acceleration and deep demonstration projects, and a lot on education and training and creating the science policy interface that we need is instrumental for accelerating the transition to sustainability. Over the last 20 years, we've attracted 500 million research funding in competitive research bids. And of course, in all we do, equality, gender equality, it comes up as one important variable and also as one important mobilizer for the transition. We know that the world is as resilient as the last country and person in it, so we need to build national but also personal resilience. And we also know that education is the most powerful weapon which can be used to change the world. I was not the first one to say this, as you all know very well. So let's see how we can create more resilience in our society by accelerating gender equality, by accelerating SDG 5, and see how education can support this acceleration. I'm going to show you a quick snapshot of how well we are doing in terms of implementing SDG 5, which is about gender equality. SDG 5 is about achieving gender equality and empowering all women and girls in the world. These are results from the Sustainable Development Report that United Nations Sustainable Development Solutions Network is producing every year since 2015, when the Agenda 2030 and the SDGs have been signed by 193 countries. As you can see, we are not doing very well. Actually, we are doing quite poorly, because green means that the SDG has been achieved, yellow means that challenges remaining, orange means that serious challenges remain in terms of implementing the SDG, and red means that huge challenges remain. We are stagnated with regards to progress, with regards to progress in implementing this SDG. And the achievement of this SDG is measured using various indicators: demand for family planning, the ratio of female to male, mean years of education, ratio of female to male labor force participation, seats held by women in national parliament, and gender gap in time spent doing unpaid work. This is how we are today. This is a simulation to 2030. If we continue with the current trends, so the current trends are definitely not enough. And this is how the SDG 4, the SDG on quality education, looks like. So you can see there is some cross-mapping. Areas where the quality education is low, and are areas where the gender equality is even bigger. So in order to accelerate gender equality and accelerate the access of women and girls to education, because we firmly believe that only through education we can achieve the change we want fast enough, the change in terms of gender equality need, not just one, we need in order to help our societies and economy to progress and get on a sustainable pathway. We've launched a mission as a UNSDSM Mission 4.7 that brings together leaders from government, academia, civil society, and businesses to accelerate the implementation of education for sustainable development around the world. And this is about education for sustainable development and global citizenship that will include peace and human rights, and gender equality is a central part of all this. And in order to really make the connection between gender education and the sustainability transition agenda, I just want to say that the SDGs, the Paris Agreement, the European Green Deal, which is, of course, focusing in Europe, but is a leadership example for the transition around the world with 4 axes: climate neutrality 2050, reduction of pollution, clean tech leadership for European companies, and also a fair transition, leave no one behind, including women and girls. And then all the recovery and resilience packages that have been introduced to create the fiscal space to recover sustainably from the pandemic. And then the additional policies that are now pumping hectically throughout 2021 in order to really implement the European Green Deal, the recovery and resilience funds. In all this, we need the women to be a very important participant. And in order to do this, we need to invest seriously in reskilling and upskilling women and girls in order to really enable them to be part of this green and digital sustainability transition. What we can do with that, we know that women are not only the hardest hit by this pandemic, they are also the backbone of the recovery in communities. So we need to put them in the center of all recovery efforts. This basically means
Phoebe.
that all
Phoebe.
COVID response plans, I'm concluding, every recovery package and packaging of resources needs to address the gender impacts of this pandemic. Thank you for your patience.
Thanks a million, Phoebe. Appreciate that. It's just we have a tight schedule today with multiple speakers from all over the world. I'm going to jump now to Los Angeles. Dee, do you want to do the introduction? I'll bring up our friends from Los Angeles have sent us a message, also representing Barcelona and Mexico. So I'll bring that up on the screen, Dee, and then very kindly, if you can introduce, we can hear that play out.
Amazing. One of our partner cities, so the city of Los Angeles, has a very powerful message to share with our audience on gender equality and how they are progressing SDG 5. So play it away, Gareth.
Hi, my name is Holly Milgren Smith, and I am the coordinator for the City Hub and Network for Gender Equity, or CHANGE. CHANGE is the world's first international network of cities focused exclusively on gender equity. Our mission is to harness the collective power of cities to transform government services and systems to achieve gender equity in this generation. Our member cities create systemic change by identifying disparities, implementing initiatives to address needs across city operations, and tracking measures for success. The 7 cities of change, Barcelona, Buenos Aires, Freetown, London, Los Angeles, Mexico City, and Tokyo represent over 50 million people across 5 continents. Just last month, Change published a gender equality toolkit with best practices learned across our network to help other cities that are working towards gender equity. In it, we outline a series of tools across 4 areas: embedding gender in city systems, building and maintaining a gender-inclusive workforce, integrating gender in city policies, and working with stakeholders to improve city programs to the benefit of all. From our experience, we know that local policies and programs can have an outsized impact in determining the roles that women, girls, and marginalized genders play in public life, including in leadership and the economy. The work of gender equity comes to action in cities, where systemic change can increase women's access to economic opportunities and caregiving resources, safe public transportation and public spaces, and recreational activities. Change's toolkit illustrates this point using real examples from our 6 co-founding cities, including LA's Gender Equity Coalition, which embeds gender equity representatives in every city department, Barcelona's compulsory gender training, and London's violence against women and girls strategy. Cities are innovators and drivers of change that can be scaled and repeated globally. Join us at citieschange.org to learn more. Thank you.
Excellent. What an overview from Los Angeles there. Deirdre, over to yourself in terms of next up.
Great. First of all, Phoebe, incredibly powerful actions, I think, that you've highlighted in terms of your presentation, and delighted to learn what is going on as well between LA and Mexico. So up next, we are actually going to Nepal. And Teresa, I am absolutely delighted to welcome you to our panel discussion, and I guess would love to hear your thoughts in terms of the Cancer Foundation that you are involved with, but specifically, what actions do you propose to prevent gender-based violence? And in addition to that question, what are, if we could term a key challenge, one key challenge that we must address and overcome to progress the UN Sustainable Development Goals? I would love to hear your thoughts.
I think you're on mute. Oh, you're off now. There you go. Hi, Teresa.
Okay. So, namaste, good afternoon. I'm Teresa Tamang, health activist from Nepal. Currently, I'm studying psychology. I'm founder and president of the Cancer Foundation and an ambassador of World Health Innovation Summit. First of all, I would like to thank Gareth and his team for giving me an opportunity to talk about gender-based violence in today's event. I believe education plays a vital role to prevent gender-based violence. In Nepal, it is still a male-dominated society where male is considered to be the leader of the family and superior to women. Culture's issue and lack of awareness keeps us out of sight. So it is challenging to find out correct statistic of gender-based violence. Education is the link of good health, high income, and gender equality as well. And according to USAID, in each and every year of school can increase women incoming about 10 to 20%. So we can prevent gender-based violence by organizing campaign at school, because students are the future of tomorrow. They are the leaders of tomorrow. Peer-to-peer training, and empowerment training or empowerment practices, as well as accessible information about what gender-based violence is about in different forms. So gender-based violence is profound human rights with social and development. So we need more leaders who believe to make a difference and stand to raise it. So for this, we need leaders from top of the organization of politics. Communication need to be improved, and safe place is required for this gender-based violence. At the same time, so there is a problem, and that is all over the world. So we are unsure how big it is here. So we need help and guidance to acknowledge it happens, and ownership of leaders and decision maker to create the solution. Discussion have to formulate third. Not all the solution can implement in Nepal, but all should be considered. And at the last, I would like to say, women have energy and enthusiasm to make a difference to the nation, to the world, but all she need is an opportunity.
Incredibly powerful messages there. Thank you so much, Teresa. And I am looking forward to some of the Q&As because you seem to be taking such a proactive approach and very kind of tangible initiatives as well to progress gender equality. So I think it would be interesting to learn maybe during our Q&A session just a little bit more about that. Gareth, I believe up next we have a video from Sophia Karadima, which I would love to share. I know it's a very powerful video in terms of our theme today, which is action.
Hello, I'm Sofia Karadima. I'm a senior editor and researcher at Investment Monitor, which is a digital publication focused on cross-border investments. I'm delighted to participate to this event today and thank you for the opportunity to share my perspective. Tackling gender-based violence once and for all is essential, and foreign direct investments have a key role to play into this. Due to the new jobs created through FDI projects, women are given more access to skilled and unskilled jobs, which improves female participation in the labor force, especially in the formal sector. This is important as women and younger girls are more at risk of falling into poverty because they often lack their own source of income and assets. By having their own source of income and assets, women are gaining financial independence, which is essential for their empowerment. What's more, multinational companies can promote women empowerment by being a channel of transmission of new technologies and best practices. By hiring and providing training to female employees, they give them the opportunity to gain technical skills and adapt to changing work environments, which is key for women empowerment and financial inclusion. On top of that, it is crucial for multinational enterprises to transfer best practice policies towards female employees. FDI can help to narrow the gender pay gap in cases where multinational corporations implement corporate social responsibility initiatives that commit them to wage equality. The gender pay gap is a significant driver for decision making within households, and reducing it can positively impact on achieving the UN Sustainable Development Goals. However, the pandemic has had a negative effect on women, highlighting that the SDG 5, which is about achieving the gender equality and empowering all women and girls, has a long way to go before hitting the target set for 2030. The pandemic has led to more gender-based violence, with increases in domestic and sexual violence, child marriage and abuse as a result of the economic crisis and the school closures. Gender-based violence is not only a human rights violation, but is also a public health challenge and a barrier to sustainable development and peace. This is why the private and the public sector should join forces and back investments that embrace ESG and the achievement of SDGs in a bid to boost women's welfare, promote gender equality, and tackle gender-based violence.
Fantastic message there. Dee, I think have you frozen, or I think the screen is frozen, unfortunately. You're back.
I am here, yeah, loud and clear in relation to progress requires investment. And I think, yeah, that is certainly a key takeaway from that, and a theme I think that will continue to run through our actions. So moving on to our another incredible panelist, Anka Del Rio, IT alumni president. Anka, I'd love for you maybe to do a short introduction about yourself and your role, and also to pose the question to you. What actions do you propose to prevent gender-based violence, and why these specific actions?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for passing me the mic, and thank you for this incredible invitation to contribute. So just to give you a broad overview about my background, beside of being the EAT Alumni President and telling you a bit about EAT Alumni, I would like to mention that I'm also coming from the healthcare background. I'm a public health specialist, and I have been driving lots of positive action in the field of implementing innovation and the meaningful adoption of innovation in healthcare practice in the past years across various European countries, the United States and Australia. So I'm very happy to be here and support the Sustainable Development Goals overall, and most importantly, with a lot of focus on health, mostly in the light of the latest events that we are all witnessing in the past 2 years. So a little bit about the EAT Alumni Network. We are a network of over 14,000 alumni across all EAT KICs. To give you a bit of a background, EAT stands for European Institute of Innovation and Technology, and the KIC stands for Knowledge and Innovation Communities. So these include health, digital, climate, manufacturing, raw materials, energy, food, and urban mobility. So as you can imagine, across the various sectors which are actually currently tackled within the Sustainable Development Goals. Our community is open to all young leaders across these industries who want to make a positive impact, which actually enables them to be part of our activities, to be part of the KIC activities, and to make a positive impact, as I said, for shaping a better future for our generations and for future generations as well. The AT Alumni Network is also an amazing opportunity to feel empowered by a passionate and purpose-driven community, fostering gender-based innovation and entrepreneurship for public good and social impact. I would like to emphasize here that we do not only empower women to become leaders in innovation and entrepreneurship, because we actually do not know any other way. At EAT Alumni, we built a reality based of gender equity. And this is the only way we actually knew it. We are a young but not so young community. But due to the premises that we actually built this community on, this is the only way we know. So we are very proud of it. Back to your questions, Zeri. Thank you so much. Very impactful ones, I have to say. And I think that each and every one of us should actually ask himself or herself this. I would say for your first question, what action do we need to propose to prevent gender-based violence? I would say that we need to talk about it. We need to listen to the victims, and we need to enable community programs that create awareness about domestic abuse and empower and protect women who speak up. I think that speaking up here is a matter of cultural shift. And we as change makers in our daily lives, and if we want to contribute to a better future, we need to make sure that we empower this kind of initiatives. We need to make sure that we foster speaking up. And even though if we are lucky, and we're coming, most of us probably from countries where this is not such a big issue as it is in so many other countries, unfortunately, it's still incredible to acknowledge that this is still a reality, and to find ways how we can actually contribute and support other women who are in a more unfortunate situations, because we are all into this together. So I think this is one of the main principles that we need to be very aware of, and we need to acknowledge that we can actually do something for it, instead of saying, well, it's not happening to me, it's not really my problem. So now to your second question, what is a key challenge that we must address to ensure progress of the UN Sustainable Development Goals? I actually think there are like several pillars that we all must tackle, regardless if we're an organization or an individual involved in positive action and change. And the most important one is the cultural shift. I think that gender equity and gender balanced sustainable systems do not entitle only equality. We need to empower individuals to succeed to their best potential, regardless of their gender. This being told, I really believe that beyond promoting female leadership, which has been an incredible advancement, which has been done in the past years, we must properly educate young generations to foster gender collaboration. We need to educate boys and girls to work together and balance their skills. This is the only way forward for positive impact. And then moving on to collective action, of course, youth activism, and the power that this has in the past years. We all have seen what this can do. And of course, by fostering purpose-driven innovation. I believe strongly that in order to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals as soon as possible, because we're running out of time, we need to make sure that the innovation must be driven by true human values and by champions of positive change. This is the only way forward. Thank you so much.
Anke, I think incredibly powerful actions and very kind of tangible as well. We're hearing about the culture shift. And I think that's something that cross-cuts all of our countries, all of our societies. And I think the really key is with the cultural shift. I think we have all the policies in place. We have all the research. We have the learnings. We know what needs to be done. Now it's how do we trigger and maintain that cultural shift? And I'm also, hearing very strongly, actually, but from Teresa, from Phoebe, about collective action, education of boys and girls as well. And I'd love to get your thoughts on what you think is hindering this progress. What is hindering that cultural shift? And how do we overcome that?
Is that to Anke or to me?
Yeah, I'll throw it out to the panel. Yeah, if there's anyone that has any ideas on that.
I can take over this and bring my bold ideas a bit further. I think a very important point for what's hindering us, it's the fact that in our societies, there are still so many actors that can do so much, but still are so alienated and are sitting, still in the backseat, feeling as victims, although they are not, now really focusing on more developed societies and saying what I actually said in my speech. Well, I'm not a part of this. I have not experienced this. I don't know exactly what it is, and to be honest, I don't have time for it. So I think this is the first step forward, and I think that a major thing that can be done it's towards the community programs. So I really believe in the community power in order to change cultures. So as long as we have all the tools and policies in place. To my experience, I think what's hindering us, it's the lack of involvement. So as soon as we move one step forward and we make sure that communities are going to empower themselves and are going to start collaborating instead of competing in so many cases, right? We have seen this in so many industries. Just myself coming from the healthcare industry, I mean, we're struggling to deal with collaboration before competition for so many years, and we're still having so many gaps. So this is something that I think it's still hindering us, but I am also quite optimistic about it. I have seen so much action being taken. I still think there's so much awareness that still needs to be done, but I truly believe in the power of youth, for example, which I also mentioned, youth activism, which has been doing tremendous transformations in the past year mostly.
Definitely. I fully agree and support that. And I think sometimes certain segments may tend to other the issue. And you're right, this doesn't affect me. But it's trying to get that whole of society approach, to get buy-in from all demographics, all of society, from our youth, particularly, and mainstreaming that into their consciousness and the education system. I think particularly when we focus in on gender-based violence, we do see that it undermines the health, the dignity, the security, and the autonomy of its victims, and we do tend to see that it's shrouded in kind of a culture of silence. And when it comes to health, obviously, survivors can suffer sexual and reproductive health consequences. We see forced and unwanted pregnancies, unsafe abortion practices, traumatic fistula, sexually transmitted infections, including HIV and even death. I mean, this is something that permeates and impacts across society. And I think we're all very cognizant, like this occurs in every country, in homes, in streets, in workplaces, and you know, isn't just something that happens in times of maybe conflict or crisis. So I think some of those tangible actions that you've suggested are incredibly powerful for us to bring forward. I guess, Teresa, in terms of your background, obviously, like we've learned a great deal now in relation to the Nepalese context. Any kind of key learnings as well from some of those initiatives and programs that you are pursuing, that you would like to share? What's worked, what hasn't worked? Where are the barriers that you're encountering, and how can we as a global society support the progress that we want you to make?
You're on mute, Teresa, unfortunately. I'll see if I can.
Okay.
Oh.
So due to light problem, I'm so sorry for that. So
no problem.
Okay. So nearly 1/3 of women have been suffering from abuse in their lifetime. So if we talk about Nepal, then 35% women are suffering from abuse inside their home, and which is unreported and unrecorded informally and formally in informal institute. So psychological violence has been found high in women in Nepal after coming physical and economics. And in my point of view, what I think is like women are there is a less empowerment opportunity for the women over here in Nepal, and I think for that, and even in school and colleges, or as she said, or while we were walking on the street, we are facing abuses at all. So for that, what I think is that we need to organize campaign at school, because students are the futures of tomorrow. They are the leaders of tomorrow. So there should be an empowerment opportunity at the same time to make female independent. And yeah, these are the things which I want to mention.
Amazing, incredible. And yeah, I think it is potentially one thing to highlight as well. I mean, there are so many commonalities with what we're facing globally, that it actually does provide this collective opportunity for us to really push in terms of progressing gender equality, because we do see how the rest of the UN Sustainable Development Goals cannot be achieved unless we achieve SDG 5. Because gender and gender equality cross-cuts every single one of those areas. And I know, Gareth, from a WHIS perspective, you are championing and leading on some incredible initiatives where we see gender equality and what we call gender mainstreaming being very much implemented through our programs, and with all of our programs are being conducted under the lens of gender equality, equitable practices, gender responsive budgeting, and I'd love to maybe learn a little bit more on some of those recent incredible developments.
Sure, absolutely. I think first of all, it's about advocacy, and Anke and Teresa spoke about, and yourself, Deirdre. I mean, this is about helping and supporting you know, men and women who are facing gender-based violence and other discriminations across the world. It's Human Rights Day today as well. Let's not forget that. I think this is about us taking a bit of responsibility, and also through the platforms that we have, you know, World Health Innovation Summit, Global Social Prescribing Alliance, SDG Cities platform, EITE, whatever it is, we need to work together, collaborate, move forward, and that's how we learn, and we can accelerate that growth when we come together and work together. I think this forum today is an exciting opportunity for us just to start that process, and then to build on that and build that momentum, because as Teresa said, I mean, the numbers are staggering. Like when you look at the, 30%, 35% of women who face domestic violence, for example, and during the pandemic, we've had, that has certainly increased. And it's very unfortunate, the situation that we find where you'd have, people who are in domestic violence situations where they can't actually get out of that situation because of the COVID situation. So it's all sort of built up. So very much advocacy, and like you said, Deirdre, our role within the 17 Sustainable Development Goals and implementing that across the cities around the world is to identify projects and look at how we bring the knowledge, the know-how and the partners so that we can actually finance projects that are put forward. And we very much see this as an opportunity to embed gender-based shall we say, strategies within those projects when they go for financing. And that's something we really want to do. I mean, that's a bit of a summary in terms of what we're doing. We of course, have our SDG Cities program. Everything is available on our website. But I mean, I'm very encouraged by what we've heard today. You know, our panelists are excellent, given the overview of how people are mobilizing. And this just provides us with an excellent opportunity to push things forward, because remember, the Agenda 2030 is the Agenda 2030. So we really need to get our skates on and move forward. So over to you, Deirdre.
I couldn't agree more, Gareth. And I think last year when we were talking about the challenges and surfacing the challenges that was hindering our progress, I think that was very much against the backdrop of COVID. And we may have been disheartened at the time to see a distinct lack of progress, particularly since COVID hit, around progressing the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals in their entirety. But also we saw a rollback in terms of the progression made around gender equality. I think now there's a recognition that COVID may have actually provided a key opportunity to facilitate that global mobilization, a recognition that the system is broken. And actually at the heart of the system is equality. Because inequality, as we've seen, it can be a key driver of instability. It can be a key driver of conflict. So getting that piece right will have this knock-on impact on all those other areas that we want to see progress in. And I think it really has been about understanding the drivers, like understanding the gender dynamics, the power relations, as that was talked about today, the culture. This will assist us and all of us in preventing gender-based violence, because there's no single factor that can explain GBV in our societies, but rather it's this myriad of interrelated factors that contribute to it. And the interplay of these factors really lies at the root of the problem. And I think that has been very skillfully articulated by our panelists today. And what I particularly love is those honing in on those actions, because let's face it, we're all sick of talking about this. We know what needs to be done, and we need for these actions to start taking place in our homes, within our extended families, within our communities. And that will start having this kind of tsunami effect throughout all of society, and globally we will start feeling those ripples of progress. So before we finish up today, I would love to ask Teresa and Anka, and I know we have some great videos as well that will be available from our panelists. But Teresa, if I could ask you first of all, just for one key takeaway or action that those that are watching here today, it doesn't matter how big or small, local or international, but just something tangible that they can implement to assist in preventing gender-based violence, but ultimately to progress gender equality.
So I believe that we need more leaders. We need more leaders who believe to make this need to become from the top of the organization, from politician, and at the same time, financial is needed to people to help and find and to create the solution. And what I want to say is that women have energy and enthusiasm to make a difference to the nation, to the world. But all we need is an opportunity, and we all women need to stand together and need to raise our voice.
Amazing. I love it. I love that message. And Anka, if I could ask you for one key tangible action that we can all go away and implement into our lives today.
Absolutely. Thank you for such a great question. For the key takeaway, I would like to take a bottom-up approach for gender-based violence here, and saying that speak up might be the key to all of us. Women who are victims should speak up, and we must listen, we must believe in it, and we must support them. Looking into the root cause, I think that another important element that must be mentioned here is the mental health. This should not be anymore a taboo and stigmatizing topic anymore. Male who experience mental health burdens that make them feel violent should speak up and seek help, and communities should empower them and help them to do so. This is the only way we can actually implement change from a bottom-up perspective.
I love that, and I do agree with the bottom-up approach as well, particularly when we see incredible policies, and we see a lot of strategies that have been developed. We obviously have a lot of legislation in place as well, and all those kind of key strategic elements are in place. Now it's time from that bottom-up push, I think, where we all get on board and see the collective benefit, because this is really about women and men working together. Gender equality benefits all of society. And I think that certainly is kind of one of the key messages as well I've taken from today, that this isn't just a women's issue to progress. This is about women and men, and being champions of each other, but also just working closely together. So I certainly feel a lot more energized, I think, by today's discussion. I certainly have a lot of key takeaways as well that Gareth, we can certainly discuss at implementing into our programs. So I just want to thank both Anka, Teresa, Phoebe, just who had to leave us, and also the additions of Sophia, and obviously from LA and Mexico as well. Just the incredible insights into how they're driving the progress around SDG 5. So Gareth, thank you so much for this opportunity.
Yes, no, I have to thank everyone for joining us as well. And if you're watching this on replay, by all means, put a comment down and we can see if we can answer it. But I think there's a couple of questions and a couple of answers and things we need to move forward on, and ask the question, what will you do now? What's the next steps? What happens after this webinar? So it's very important that we make the conscious effort to try and be ourselves, kind of lead by example, as was mentioned, and try and be conscious of our actions so that has an impact. And I think we also, from a health perspective, we really need to look at the next generation and ensure that the children have the support mechanisms in place so that these problems don't arise. In terms of Teresa's question around, empowerment and financing, and I've been on many forums over the last couple of months, and I'm constantly told that finance is not a problem, like that financing sustainable cities is actually quite a lucrative business. And we've actually we're just finalizing the report on our SDG fund, SCR 500, which we'll publish in Davos next month, which gives an accumulative return of over 60%. So we are creating funds and mechanisms to finance projects within the cities that we are working with. So in terms of the financing, I don't think that's an issue. I think what the key here is mindset as well, and changing the mindset to move from cost-based value to actually value creation and the opportunities that we can bring together by putting early intervention into some of the solutions that we've heard from today. So this brings massive opportunity. So those listening now need to think carefully about the future. What type of future society do you want to live in? I have two young girls who are 8 and 6. I very much want them to join or to grow up where they have opportunities and equal opportunities. And that goes for boys as well. So I'm very energized, as you say, Deirdre, and delighted that we've held our second conference, you may say, virtually this year. Hopefully next year we do it in person, if the circumstances allow. So just finally to say from me, thanks for watching, thanks for tuning in, thanks to our fantastic speakers, grateful to Teresa and everyone else, Anke, Phoebe, and those who've joined us as well, Sophia, and the messages that we've received from around the world. A couple of apologies, of course. Some people couldn't join for personal circumstances, so that's unfortunate. We will catch up with them in due course. And thanks to Deirdre for leading this, for driving this positive change as part of our global network in gender equality. And we will ensure that our policy, strategies, investments that we make in the future will align with SDG 5 and leave no one behind. So we'll close our session, and any further information that you need, you can find it on our website, www.whis.world or hashtag WHIS, hashtag SDG cities, for example. And we look forward to talking again in the near future. So it's a goodbye from everyone here on the panel.